So firstly, I'd like to welcome Russell Weeks, who is the latest VIP to take part in our podcast series, Pathways to Success. Welcome. So first question to you, Russell. What's the most important advice you would give any professional looking to contract, highlighting the difference between permanent and contract roles?
Okay, well, good to be here, Katherine. My history is as a regulator for about 11 years, where I managed a portfolio of firms. I moved to consultancy, where I equally managed large numbers of different clients across different sectors. So the progression to contracting for me was primarily driven around having variety. But there'll be choice that people need to make. And I guess the first thing I would advise anyone to do would be to understand the context of contracting to their particular specialism and sector. Understand the type and nature of roles that are available to them, and the frequency of such roles being available. That would be the first thing. Do your research, understand the sources of those types of roles, where you would get them, who you need to speak to, who you need to network with, those sorts of pieces of information. Do your research and create a plan. This is really important. Contract roles are significantly lower in number to permanent roles, and therefore one needs to think about how they're going to manage the time between contracts when they're searching for a new contract. Two elements here. Think about the financial position, how you're going to service loans, mortgage payments, other types of expenditure. Secondly, how you're going to manage your time. I plan to be potentially between contracts of up to 3 and 6 months due to the nature of the type of roles that I look for. That means planning to be able to service those costs that I have, and also how I'm going to spend my time, how I'm going to keep myself busy, how do I maintain the network. So have a plan. I think it's really important to have a plan. I've come across people who have struggled with managing those challenges financially, equally managing those challenges around isolation, being on your own, being around family members for long periods of time. I know COVID's changed that for a lot of us recently, but it is important to have a plan. In terms of other elements, I know that the IR35 is around the corner, and that's going to change contracting considerably. My experience is based upon day rate contracts, and as such, I need an accountant to do my financial reporting to HMRC, but there are roles that I need to do myself in that regard as a business person running a business in essence. So those, for me, are things to think about. Have a plan, understand the market, make sure it's right for you. It's not right for everyone. We touched upon your question, permanent versus contract. One thing for me, I noticed very early on was, whereas for permanent roles, I would be provided by an agency or a recruiter with a job spec. For contracting roles, it can be very, very different. It can be based upon a brief conversation on the phone, or it can be based upon a very, very short set of details in an email, for example. That has a bearing on what you know about what's intended with the role, how applicable the role is to you and your skill set. I've had to attend an interview based upon very little information, so it means that you're planning across a broad spectrum of potential skills that they're going to call upon in order for you to be successful in that particular role. So that's for me a very important differentiation between a permanent role and a contract role, is that I have seen on occasion very limited narrative around what the ask is in essence. I guess some of the key things people would be interested in is around remuneration. As a day rate contractor, if I go to work and work for a client, I get paid. If I'm not working, I don't get paid. There's no for me, no holiday pay, no sickness pay. There's no other benefits like season ticket loans, all those sorts of things that you take for granted when you have a permanent role. So there are things to factor into how that would affect you in being a contractor. Other things to think about are the different types of contracting role. I've been involved in a broad spectrum, some which are more BAU orientated. So you turn up to a role to fulfill a resourcing gap, for example, maternity, whatever it is. you get introduced to the team, you do your training, you get given your kits, and then off you go. Other roles, I've turned up and been ready for reception, for example, and then taken to a meeting, provided with an overview, and then asked, so what do you think? It's very, very different, more subject matter expert, more consultancy than a BAU role. So I guess you need to understand how the types of roles that you're going to be going for or looking for, how that's going to translate to you. You're going to better adapt to that. It's one of those things. It's just being prepared, having a plan and being prepared. Really enjoy the flexibility. I enjoy the time between contracts. I enjoy working with a variety of different clients. As I mentioned at the outset, I like variety. So I get the opportunity to land, execute something, whatever it is, build some relationships and finish up and leave the client and go off and do something else. And it is about, for me, the variety.
How do you overcome the challenge of building your own brand, personal name in the market?
Now, this is really interesting. There are so many different ways of doing this, and it will come down to, I guess, your own personal preference and appetite in terms of how much and how far you want to go. I think building a network with recruiters is key. Keeping in contact with recruiters is key to understand what's going on in the marketplace. Doing a great job, delighting your customer is really important, because recommendations speak louder than anything else. And that's really, really good for getting maybe extensions to your contract or getting recommended in the marketplace.
Yeah, and referral of business, exactly, yeah.
Absolutely. Equally, with the advent and the introduction of wider use of social media platforms such as LinkedIn, for example, you can comment, you can be your own publicist, if you like, in terms of promoting yourself, commenting on other things, commenting on other people's comments, doing your own podcasts, your own blogs. Again, it's down to you, the extent to which you want to do that. Some people are more comfortable with doing that, some people less so. But I guess do what's right for you. Don't try and copy other people, because it may well not suit your particular personality or style.
What project were you in where you learned the most from your contract, would you say, personally or professionally?
It's about having a plan, understanding what the ask is. That's fairly key. If you have those things, that will aid success and what you're going to do. Equally, understand the rules of engagement with your client, with your customer. There are, as we've discussed, there are BAU type roles where you are there fulfilling a resource gap potentially. There are more subject matter expert roles where you may well be more directive in terms of how you're managing the relationship, in terms of what the client wants, or more leadership roles where you're actually driving something. Understand that is crucial. If you get it wrong, then you'll be at odds with what your customer's after. And I've unfortunately seen people who have struggled with that in the past, going in being more directive when actually they just wanted advice. So that's the second thing. Simplicity for me. Simplicity is really important. On a few jobs that I've worked on over the last few years, I've inherited someone else's convoluted and complex plans, which no one really understood. So I basically simplified everything, created it and developed a new plan in language and in terms and phrases that the customer understood, and executed it, got purchased, buy-in from executives, boards, etc. And it worked. I guess, again, it comes down to understanding the needs of the customer. That's really, really key. I guess finally, be a trusted advisor. Aim to be a trusted advisor all the time. Aim to get the client to trust what you're saying, to want to listen to you. That will open doors for you in understanding the wider business, and possibly even more opportunities for you within that business.
Your views, tips and advice have been really useful for our audience and network. So thank you very much for your time today.
It's been a pleasure.